I'm Lynn Kaminsky, the Physics and Astronomy Department, and a colleague from the Education Development Center, Dr. Ariana Arista, and I got a grant that is for 3 campuses, our campus, Cal State East Bay, and Chico. And we have been working to figure out what kinds of resources to develop for neurodivergent students on our campuses. Each campus has a different approach because we're all at a different stage in our development. So today you're going to hear from a bunch of Sonoma State students and now people that have graduated and were students when we started the project and are now staff here at Edion, which is the name of my research group. We're up on the 3rd floor of Schultz. You're welcome to drop by and visit, and we're very happy that you came to watch the training. Now we will start the slides. Our first speaker will be Chris Bell.
Hello. As Lynn mentioned, my name is Christopher Bell. I am a recent graduate of Sonoma State, and I graduated with a bachelor's in astrophysics during last spring. And so what I wanted to discuss was the reason for why we are doing this presentation. So you might be asking, why is this training necessary? So first of all, we have 3 basic concepts we want to instill here. We want to acknowledge that we want to emphasize that knowledge is necessary, with faculty needing to know the requirements of various neurodiverse people who might be in their classes. We want to recognize that the identity of those people is as important to them. We want to recognize that neurodiversity is an important part of their identity, just as much as where they might have grown up or what their interests are. And we also want to show that community support is important to their well-being, because us as social creatures means that we need a community to help with our well-being, and it very much helps if that community helps support every part of our identity. So this is a screenshot from the strategic plan set up by Sonoma State this year. And we want to show that with this training, we can help SSU fulfill what it sets out for itself to accomplish here, since helping with the needs of neurodiverse people can help with respecting the diversity of our student body, along with allowing them to connect with the community that they're a part of, and also allow the community to adapt and respond to their needs. And so before we go with the rest of our presentation, I want everyone here and in the Zoom to take a moment to reflect on your thoughts regarding the word neurodiversity, what that means to you. We continue. And if you're here remotely, you can also mention in the chat your thoughts regarding that. So now I'm going to hand off to Susan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Susie. I am a senior here at Sonoma State. I am a psychology major and also very grateful to be a part of this project. So as Christopher was talking, we were talking about neurodiversity, but we want to go deep inside what neurodiversity means. So first, we're going to talk about the neuro. And we just want to say that every brain is unique, no matter if you are neurodiverse or neurotypical. We all have a wide variation of what our strengths and challenges could be. Some of these strengths and challenges could be, learning disabilities or intellectual. They could also encompass mental health as well. Some people may require different accommodations. These accommodations can vary. They can vary. from medical therapy or just assistant with daily needs. It could be just as simple as providing somebody with headphones while going out into public spaces. Okay. And now we'll talk about the diversity. So when you think of neurodiversity, you mainly just think of autism. However, we have an umbrella which encompasses many different parts of neurodiversity. And I also want to say that neurodiversity is encompassing of neurotypical as well. It's more of a spectrum. We want to also say that neurodiversity is not, or I just want to say that autism is not standalone. We could also have co-occurring disabilities. And on here, you might also see mental illnesses as well. So such as BPD or schizophrenia. These can also require some types of accommodations. And we do see some people going to DSS for these types of accommodations. So we wanted to also include these in our umbrella. A fun fact that a lot of the people who go to the DSS have, there's a 3-to-1 ratio of autism and ADHD students versus other disabilities. So I think that that's really relevant here on campus, is knowing that, you know, there are a lot of, you know, either ADHD or autistic or both here. So just knowing that that is in your general student body is really important to mention. And on the bottom, it says that this umbrella is not exhaustive of all neurodivergent ways of being. So like I said, it is a spectrum, but this is just part of what makes neurodiversity whole. And now I would like to pass it over to Gabe.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Gabe. I'm a senior psychology major here. And what we're going to talk about on this slide is some sort of misconceptions around neurodiversity. So you can see neurodiversity is the sort of larger umbrella term, like Susie was talking about, that encompasses both neurotypical, which is the sort of preferred term for normal. That's a little bit less stigmatizing for people who are not neurotypical. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have neurodivergent. And this is a very simplistic model, but it's one that's pretty common in people's sort of awareness. And if we go to the next slide, we can see a little bit more of a nuanced model. So here we can see that there are various different realms of functioning, and everyone can have both strengths and weaknesses within each one of these areas. So for example, someone may be really good at one form of language, for example, writing or spoken language, and then be really poor at another sort of language or communication. And another really important thing is that these areas intersect. So obviously your abilities and your language skills also will affect your ability to communicate in a social context. And so it's a much more multifaceted and sort of complex view of the way that different people's brains work. And now I'm going to hand it back to Susie.
So barriers in education, this kind of relates to just the world in general, how education in the world is kind of tailored to neurotypical students. And this can make it difficult for neurodivergent students to learn. Also, social stigmas regarding neurodivergent can also make students feel a little worse off. Say, you know, you're in a group and everyone's understanding the, you know, the lesson, or you're having trouble, you know, with dyscalculia or dysgraphia, and you might feel harder on yourself and not wanting to go out and get support. So having inclusion initiatives are really important. Having invisible disabilities is really difficult for people, especially in a class full of neurotypical students. So we just want to make sure that we're including neurodiverse, you know, what do you call it? Neurodiverse materials and curriculum in your education, because it's just really inclusive for everybody. And yeah, like I said, it's really difficult to have an indivisible disability. So just to keep that in mind. And the next slide we have a whole bunch of existing support systems here at SSU. So we're just going to go over what we found would be really helpful. So we have the Learning and Academic Resource Center, also known as the LARC. We have DSS, which is Disability Services for Students. We have the Neurodiversity Club, the Hub Center, Counseling and Psychological Services, also known as CAPS, and Human Resources. So CAPS is my favorite. As a neurodiverse student who has had co-occurring mental health issues, I have personally used CAPS lots of times, and I have found not only their group therapy, but their individual therapy to be extremely important and helpful in my learning here at Sonoma State. I feel like they're very inclusive of how they support you as a neurodivergent student. Every room I've been in with a therapist has had fidgets, and they've always been really mindful of how they approach your neurodivergent self. I've also wanted to mention that they do have a few neurodivergent support groups. So Fidget to Focus is an ADHD learning skill group. This is more of a drop-in where you can learn tools and tips about, what helps an ADHD mind in learning. There is an autism support group, which is, you don't need to have an official autism diagnosis for this, which is really great. Emma Coe is the person who runs this group. All you have to do is just go and ask to be screened for this, and then you just work with Emma and see if it's a good fit for you. So if you would like more information, their contact information is right there, and I would just highly suggest that you do suggest this to your students if you feel like they might be having some issues. It's not just for talk therapy. It is really all inclusive. And I think the next slide, I would like to hand this over to my friend Robin.
Yeah, totally.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm a recent SSU graduate from the psychology department. Now I work at Edion as an administrative coordinator. And I'm going to talk about the LARC for a little bit, which I worked at for my senior year. The LARC is the free tutoring center on campus available to all students for a variety of subjects. There's writing tutors, math tutors, subject-specific tutors, and all of those tutors, as part of their training, receive training on how to work with neurodiverse individuals. So if a student is having trouble, you can is a great idea to send them to the LARC regardless of if they are neurodivergent or not. They also have the tutorial program and the supplemental instruction program. The SI program is, which saying you either know about it or you don't, because it is a tutor who sits in your class and watches the class and then holds outside study sessions. And so that is a service that they provide, not to every class, but to a lot of the larger lectures in, basic or lower division science and maths and whatnot. And their contact information was just at the bottom there. They're on the first floor of Schultz. And we come over to DSS, which is also on the first floor of Schultz. And we've talked about a little bit here. They are the Disability Services for Students department. They help you get your accommodations, and so they can do things like accommodate exams. I've taken a few exams with them because they were an in-person exam, and I can't do silence. If it gets too quiet, I get this weird pressure in my ears, and it gets hard to think. I took my exams in the DSS office where they would put on a white noise machine, and that was great. They also do alternate media / assistive technology, such as, say you're assigned a movie and you are blind, they might be able to provide you auditory descriptions and stuff like that. Dietary accommodation requests is they can help work with the dining hall and make sure that you can get food no matter what your dietary restrictions are. And once again, their contact information is at the bottom. I'm actually going to pass this off now to, I think, Xander.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, that's Gabe.
That's Gabe. Okay, well, I wrote it wrong in the slides.
All right, so another relatively new resource at Sonoma State is the Neurodiversity Club. I'm actually the president of the club here. And this is our first year being, sort of fully active. And we had some great interest. The club is basically a space and sort of community for neurodivergent students, staff, faculty as well, or anyone who identifies as an ally. So you don't have to be diagnosed with anything in particular. If you identify as being neurodivergent in some way, or you just want to come hang out with people like that, people like us, then you can join definitely. We host fun events. We do special interest talks where members get to share things that they're really passionate about. We just had a really great one by Christopher talking about astronomy, which was super interesting. And like I said, we do welcome staff and faculty involvement in the club. So if you are a staff or faculty and you identify as neurodivergent, please, we'd love to get to know you. I think it'd be really great to sort of facilitate those connections between students and faculty and staff. And now I'm going to pass it to Xander.
All right. I am going to sit because I also have physical disabilities. So take and do my best to direct my voice towards the microphone right there. I am Xander. I am a part of the CHRM grad program, which is an offshoot of anthropology dealing with heritage studies specifically. And I'm going to talk to you first about the Hub Center. It is located within Schultz, which I believe is technically part of the library. It is on the first floor. There's lots of signs leading towards it, so you'll be able to find it relatively easily once you're in the right area. Hub stands for honoring unity and building. But it is also a hub for all of the different minorities on campus, basically. A lot of POC clubs, a lot of more like queer-focused things as well. They sponsored several drag shows, things of that kind. Basically just a place for people to belong if they fall anywhere outside of the norm, so to speak. It is for students, staff, faculty. It's all about communicating. It's all about belonging, all about connection. And they are big proponents of the core 4, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. They have a number of training programs, and if you're interested in getting in contact with them about any of what I've mentioned, there is their email right there on screen. We also have human resources here on campus, as most places do. This includes DSS, which has previously been mentioned, the CSU Employment Disability Resources, which helps not students, but also employees, many of which are students as well. There is also the Job Accommodation Network, which is not involved with the CSU system specifically, but is really good at helping neurodivergent people get properly paired up with jobs that are within their skill sets and interests as well. But it's not all about just being able to do something, it's also about wanting to. We have the contact information for HR there as well. They also have an office right here in Salazar Hall, on the second floor. So moving a little bit away from SSU specifically towards more general neurodiverse needs. Neurodiverse students have a lot of unique positive qualities. We tend as a society to focus more on the negatives, but there are a lot of places where we can thrive as well. We are able to focus very deeply on the things that intensely interest us, sometimes to a fault, but more often than not, it's very helpful. It's very rewarding, lots of dopamine, lots of learning. It's the reason a lot of autistic people do, lean towards more academic fields, is because they love to learn, especially when it's about an area of interest like this. We also have a strong ability to work independently, and we're able to self-motivate. We thrive in places like work from home environments as long as there's sufficient structure, and we can very much take care of ourselves when it comes to the working environment. We're also very good at having keen attention to detail. the neurodivergent mind looks at things differently. We very much, at least in my opinion, live in a slightly different world than a lot of neurotypical people do. We can see things that they don't, or that they may have filtered out or thought was unimportant. We are also excellent writers. Many neurodivergent people can struggle with out loud communication, verbal communication, but when it comes to writing, we do tend to excel. There's also effective organization of information, objects, and systems. You may have heard of autistic people very much enjoying organization, organizing things by color and size. We enjoy the process of organizing, which is not something that a lot of people can say, and we very much thrive in an organized environment. Lastly, we have a strong empathy and a very keen sense of justice. If you've ever seen a neurodivergent person's house, they probably have lots of stuffed animals. We relate to inanimate objects in a lot of ways. We relate to other people, even when we may have struggles with social communication. We are extremely empathetic. We may not be able to understand, but we want to help. There unfortunately are some struggles as well. There's always a other side to the coin. Interpreting social cues, especially when it comes to stress and group interactions, is extremely difficult. For most people, it is worth keeping in mind that this does not by any means, none of this applies to everyone, obviously. But social cues are a lot harder to understand than outright verbal or written forms of communication. A lot of times we can struggle with understanding letters or numbers. This goes back to things like dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyslexia. Oftentimes that information can get just a little bit muddled and a little bit harder to understand. Sensory sensitivity is also a big issue. If you've been paying any attention to my hands, you may have noticed I've been playing with this fidget ring the entire time I've been talking. This is to help with understimulation, as well as basically help process things. And when it comes to noise, unpleasant sensations, especially when it comes to eating or touch, it is extremely overwhelming. If you know much about autistic people, you're probably familiar with the concept of a meltdown. That very much is tied to stimulation under or over. There are also some problems every once in a while with executive functioning. This tends to come more from the ADHD side of things, but it can be an issue with most neurodivergencies as well. There has been some debate about the term executive functioning, but it boils down at the end of the day to, thank you, focus, initiation, following directions, time management, task completion outside of special interests, and stimming. As I mentioned with the fidget ring, stimming is the act of basically channeling some of your energy out into something else. Many of the people in this room are currently stimming, as well as myself. We're just not on camera. Stimming may seem like fidgeting, or it may seem like something that indicates a lack of attention or boredom. That is not the case with neurodivergent. Neurodivergent people just stim because it's a good way to get a desirable form of stimulation. Oftentimes it means that we are more focused if we're actively stimming, because it means that we are trying to filter out things that might take our attention away from you. This all goes back to stress relieving as well, engaging with special interests, engaging with STEM aids, things like sensory objects are all very helpful for stress relieving in more stressful situations, such as public speaking or being in class, or even just being like in a bad mood. Many neurodivergent people struggle with change and transitions. It is very easy to get into a pattern and expect that pattern to continue, especially if the pattern is disrupted quickly or without warning. That can be extremely overwhelming to a lot of people. And many people struggle with fine motor movements. I know I've had that struggle myself. I've always had terrible handwriting. In fact, I much prefer to type because I find writing extremely difficult and taxing. So things that may require a more attention to detail. Smaller movements of the hands are just difficult for a lot of people. But you did not come here to hear about my neuroses specifically. You came here how to learn how to be a better neurodiverse ally. And so let's just quickly go over the goals of this training. I say 40 minutes into this training. Our ultimate goal is to foster an equitable environment for all neurotypes at SSU. Back on the diversity slide, we mentioned that neurodiversity is an extremely wide array of people. We tend to think of it as just autism or ADHD, but that's not the case at all. And we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable on this campus. And unfortunately, we have a lot of problems when it comes to that, not just here at SSU, but also just in society broader. Traditional disability services may not meet the nerds may not meet the needs of neurodiverse students. Disability services more often than not cater to physical disabilities. It's not a bad thing. It just means that DSS and other disability services similar to it may need to broaden what they think of as a disability and work specifically with students to see what they need. A stigma, unfortunately, can mean that a lot of people may not go and get these services when they need them. I know I've been told on several occasions to not be so open about the fact that I am autistic, because a lot of people, the minute you say that, it sort of changes the way that they see you. And that stigma, even if that's not the case, even if that isn't what happens when you tell people that, the fear of that can lead people to not wanting to go and access support, whether because they're worried about being outed or if they just have a heightened sense of independence, stuff like that. The good news is that we have a number of solutions for this. Evidence-based practices for the campus community are extremely helpful. Look at what is successful and then do that. It's scientific method down to its core. We are also currently looking into cost-effective suggestions to help build understanding and acceptance. This training is one of those. Lastly, we have recommendations by scholars. You will need to provide multiple means of accessing learning materials. We discussed this somewhat with the LARC and the DSS. That means sharing transcripts of things with people who are deaf, having audio descriptions for people who are blind, even having transcripts for someone who isn't deaf but just prefers to read things, such as myself. All of those are good means of making sure that learning materials are accessible to everyone, no matter their preferences or needs. We also have providing life coaches, personal coaches. Sometimes we need a little bit of help, and everyone does at the end of the day. Some people need more help, some people need less help, nothing to be embarrassed about. Including participatory events such as students presenting a seminar. Hey, look, it's the thing you're watching again. Establishing programs to better facilitate life transitions. These programs can range from providing information for life off campus to unwritten, more word of mouth expectations for a career, even just for life. Like, don't sit next to someone on the bus if there's empty seats. No one told me that. I had to learn that, very embarrassingly. But things like participatory events and life coaches, programs like this are ways to make sure that you don't have to learn just by experience. Lastly, we have the simple way to make sure that a lot of neurodivergent people will not get lost when it comes to teaching is to give clear, precise instructions for class activities and assessments. Make sure that you avoid figurative language. We may be able to understand that something is not raining cats and dogs, but we might not understand if you say something is due over the weekend when you mean Saturday at 10 o'clock. So just be sure to be as clear as possible. And to demonstrate that, I'm very clearly standing up and handing it back over to Kate.
Awesome. Thanks, Sander. So in addition to those sort of research-backed suggestions from scholars, we also wanted to hear from the actual students in the CSU system. And so to do that, we conducted a survey of not neurodivergent students as a whole, but specifically looking at autistic students. at these three campuses, Chico, Sonoma State, and Cal State East Bay. And we asked about what are the challenges that you're experiencing, what sorts of things have been really helpful, what are things that you are wanting that you're not getting. And we sort of collated those responses into some recommendations from the students themselves. So we can go to the next slide. And they fell into these four broad categories. So one is predictability. So sort of like Xander mentioned, like being really specific about when things are due, making sure that all of the lectures and materials are online, available. Multiple formats can be real helpful. A lot of people really specifically ask for having lectures to be recorded and uploaded so that, if we get distracted for one part of a lecture, we can go back and watch again to make sure we understand. Another big area was flexibility. Providing options for group work that might be difficult for some people who have difficulty in those sorts of group settings. Also, there are some students who experienced having class activities that were difficult for them in terms of sensations. If you're working with chemicals that have like a specific smell and smelling the chemical is like part of your lab, then that may not be the most neurodiverse friendly or autism friendly in this case type of activity. And then similar thing for due dates and communication modes, just having flexibility and options with these various different areas. Another one was specifically for tests and assessments, really nailing down that like having someone who can read your tests and the questions that you're asking and making sure that they can be understood if they were to be read like just super literally. Just having someone who can read and confirm that those questions actually make sense to an autistic person can really help because if you're neurotypical, you just might not be able to see it unless you're really familiar and have seen examples before of how those sorts of mix-ups can happen. Additionally, just sort of normalizing and educating about autism, and I'm going to just add in neurodiversity in general as well. And then just generally practicing patience, empathy, and proactive support. And now I'm going to pass it on to Christopher.
So as was mentioned previously, there are a few principles that we were going over during the presentation, and a lot of them tie back to this universal design for learning concept, which in short basically involves engagement to stimulate learning in students. Representing information in different ways, as was discussed before, such as visual, auditory, tactile, other ways of presenting information, and also allowing students to express what they know in different ways, such as through presentations, such as this one, or writing, or through any other way which comes easily for them, which serves as an effective way to demonstrate their knowledge of a subject that they're learning. And for the next slide. So this includes, the potential for this includes things like informing strategies, different methods of teaching, following those principles, which can also benefit the entirety of the students. Since this does focus on neurodiverse students, but it can also benefit other students in general. And it can also allows faculty to maintain, and faculty can also maintain high standards and expectations while performing these methods of teaching and maintaining flexibility for the students. And now I will hand it back to Robin.
So a few possibilities that were suggested for things to do at SSU are quiet spaces on campus to allow de-stressing in more controlled environments, ongoing trainings such as this, tailored for the different facets and components of neurodiversity, as well as ongoing Q&As and submitted feedback with the students and staff to kind of get a better idea of these things as we develop them. So say you develop a space and then someone notices there's an issue with the space that you might not have thought of, they can, in an iterative process, make further contributions. And so, again, asking people both in person and online, and if you're online, go ahead and throw it in the chat. What sort of ideas might you have about ways to make the campus a little bit more neurodiversity friendly? If we could pop over to the next slide, I think we actually have some time to just open up to people to, if you're online, to unmute and talk, or if you're in person, you can let us know. Anyone have anything? Both about this and that question that Christopher asked you at the very beginning of what do you think of as neurodiversity? So,
would either of our esteemed guests that are here in person like to comment?
Sure. Well, first I just want to say thank you for having this training. It's I've actually been kind of poking at my colleagues for a while for something like this to be offered. So I was really pleased when it came up. And I just hope that this will continue. I mean, you mentioned ongoing trainings for each facet of neurodiversity. This is a great start, and I'm bummed that more of my colleagues are here. I will say I only happened to notice it in the very small print of CTET's like kind of very long monthly email that they sent. So
I thought they were going to send out another 3 people, but that apparently happened.
Okay. Yeah, so just, I mean, I also find that as somebody who's constantly inundated by email, getting reminders is helpful. Like that. Like I was actually telling a colleague about it today and he didn't know. So yeah, just continuing to do it, you know, maybe even like a monthly thing at like a regular time, aspects of diversity, and then having opportunities for us to ask questions. I mean, I've worked with the DSS on this, but I'm really glad to know about some of these other resources that exist, some of which I wasn't aware of. So
yeah, I didn't even know they had an autism support group at CAPS until like we found that out.
Yeah, I was just like at the student health center, and I saw like a year and a half ago, I was at the student health center. I just saw this little sign, and I was like, "Huh, I should probably bring that up to the group."
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is like I'm not even sure how people are supposed to find out. But
Right.
we've also written a primer, and that we're making a website now. We have a quick version of it before next week's conference that Raquel's going to. But yeah, it's got the primer, it's got our brochure that we've used for typing, and it's going to have these slides and the recording of this session.
A primer is,
you know, accumulating some resources that go beyond what DSS is.
to clarify, primer, another word we're using is guidebook.
Oh,
Just,
guidebook,
just to
yeah.
clarify what that means.
I have a thought.
Oh.
Totally. I was like, where's the hotline for the faculty who's like, oh, I might need to modify something. I'm recognizing.
Call DSS.
And I don't mean this as emergency in terms of, oh, so say more, Lynn, about.
Well, I
this.
mean, I had that problem, right? So that was one of the ways I started my whole journey of trying to understand all of this stuff better and about teaching. So, you know, I had students in my class and clearly I wasn't reaching them properly. And so I went to DSS and talked all about it. And I started learning about autism, and then I started reading books about autism. And then I started getting money to help people, which is pretty much my okay.
We're also going to have a workshop in here. Theoretically open on November 12th, 12 for faculty. Christy from DSS is going to do a presentation on neurodiversity and like more of a kind of classroom behavior techniques. So Matthew Hology and I have been friends. And we want to make it like this will be an intro. We want to repeat the intro in the spring and then do like at least another one, if not a couple workshops around it, because I think, you know, we've had these conversations like some of our students are neurodiverse but not registered for DSS and don't have accommodation. Then I don't want to push them to have accommodation.
It's something the students have to request, right?
Yeah.
So I'm on the DSS advisory committee, so we're having another meeting on November 7th. But there were 150 students at least last year when we had more students. registered with ADHD and about 50 registered with autism, but they don't register you in more than one category.
Oh.
So people have, and at least half the autistic students I've worked with also have ADHD.
People just.
So it's a pretty common co-occurring condition. So you have to pick one or the other when you register, which is interesting. So, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of overlap between those two categories.
When I was a student, my accommodations were for my anxiety, not for either.
Behind
So, yeah.
So, yeah, so, and there are lots of people that don't even go to DSS, like.
But I'm glad to hear that for some of these things, you don't have to connect. That's great.
Yeah, all of the autism programs that I run, you don't have to have an official diagnosis. I mean, it's helpful when you're below the age of 18 and you're trying to have an IEP or a 504 from your actual school. But at the college level, it's, you know, there's no advantage or to being diagnosed if you can still get the support that you need.
Yeah, I don't
And
have
it's
a.
very expensive to get diagnosed as an adult.
Yeah.
We have
What
someone in the,
diagnosed as an adult.
we have someone in the chat, Shannon, said a number of years back, I took a comprehensive set of workshops here at SSU on UDL, ally training, and then said, thank you, Sandy. I really feel like more faculty should be encouraged to take the basics in that, and also maybe to expand for those of us who need refreshers or more advanced work in our course design. So yeah, I definitely feel like that would be really effective.
Yeah, I'm big on pushing UDL, but what we've been doing with the materials that we've been developing for our neurodivergent high school and middle school students that we work with through the NASA grant is what I call UDL on steroids. So we have video organizers, visual organizers, videos, written instructions. I mean, every single possible way of presenting information that we can think of, we're doing that. Different sets of slides at different levels, you know, different kinds of handouts, screen reader friendly handouts, of course, as well. But it's been quite an interesting learning experience. And then we test out these materials with neurodivergent high school and middle school students and their very experienced teachers. And then we get feedback from those teachers and the students. And then we revise all the materials. And I mean, it's called co-design. And the process that we're using, the students and the teacher picks a couple students that are better at communicating. We go through every single step of every single worksheet and every handout and say, is this clear enough? Is this confusing? Is this, you know, and then we've learned a lot about how to write things in a very clear and direct way that cannot be subject to misinterpretation, like Robin's example of do over the weekend.
Xander.
Yeah, or Xander's example. Whoever had that wonderful example.
The lesson study project across the CSU is similar to that, is where you identify local students, interview them for about 20 minutes, kind of lead towards content, and then you get some like conversation going about content, base level knowledge, and develop lesson.
Yeah, but this is with already developed lessons, so we're testing them out. Well,
Oh yeah, it's
Right.
a similar idea, but you're trying to redevelop the lesson
Yeah.
for those focal students by getting their input as part of the process.
yeah, but a lot of times students don't know what it is you're trying to get them to learn.
Right.
So it is often helpful to have experts who at least know what the learning goals are, and then you work on the presentation of the material in a way that can hopefully achieve the learning goals with the largest audience possible. So there are a lot of people, for example, that use screen readers, not because they're visually impaired, but just because they can understand things better when they hear it spoken than reading it.
We just turned on You Do It in Canvas that has alternative formats, and we're seeing increased use of people turning things into MP3s and listening to them.
Oh, you could do that?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Of course, right after
Mind
the
blown. I did my midterms tomorrow, right?
Oh, no, actually, that's really interesting. So I just noticed like a little drop down here next to some of my Canvas, and I was curious what that was. But actually, I do have a Canvas related question. There used to be, I think, Ally, which assessors.
It's been replaced with You Do It. So
Okay.
our strategy is we are right now onboarding it and getting all the kinks and the course scans and remediation workflow, and then we plan to be offering a couple workshops in November on You Do It. Do that, then suddenly You Do It's going to appear where Ally appeared previously on campus navigation.
Because I really appreciated the way that Ally would tell me if my materials were not accessible, fix that. Whereas now I click on the arrow and it just says no alternative formats currently available
Right,
for my
right.
file, which is not helpful for my students who are currently in class this semester.
Right, right. And it could be that your course hasn't been scanned yet, and it could be, yeah, so, yeah.
And you guys showed up, scanned my courses.
Please, thank you, and alphabetically.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything else? Anyone else online?
No.
All right.
Okay. There's another slide.
Oh, I was doing the chat. There we go. Go that way.
These are just some acknowledgements. The inspiration for these slides was taken for a training conducted at Chico by their Neurodiversity and Disability Task Force. We like to thank the support from SSU's Edion, which is Dr. Kaminsky, and obviously all of my coworkers on the project who are the student assistants, and NSF Grant 2235658, Principal Investigator Dr. Ariana Arista at the Education Development Center.
Who would be joining us if she's on maternity leave.
Yeah, and if you have questions or have feedback, these are good emails to reach us at. And that email, that link down there is to the page that will allow you to download the guidebook, the pamphlet, these slides, and as well as the recording of this training will be posted there. Not right now, obviously, but will be there at some point. Thank you. I think that'll hop on to the last slide. Last slide.
Last
Yeah,
slide.
all right, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Back to me for these.